Welcome. I'm Neil Proctor, the founder of Vault Vision, where we make really secure, fast and easy user logins and memberships for websites. In fact, it's so easy, I'll show you how we add user auth with new passwordless passkey technology and gated content features, as well as an authenticated submission form that'll tie directly into Airtable in about 30 minutes. So for today's agenda, I'll show you how to connect Webflow to Vault Vision, add sign up, login, logout buttons, hide content unless someone's logged in, and create a submission form that goes straight to Airtable. So to get started, we're going to use the membership site template that was created by the Webflow University team as our starting point. So this is available on the Made in Webflow marketplace. And this is a really nice theme. The colors pop out nice, and you can see it already has a sign up and log out feature in the header. And those are the places that we're going to reuse to add our auth. So once we clone it and we give it a name, this one's just going to be members demo. We're going to create this site in our Webflow account. Give it a little bit of time to instantiate, and we'll publish it just to kick it off and get started. So while we're waiting for it to publish, you can see the sign up and log out features in the menu, in the nav. All right, we've checked that it's working okay. Now we're going to take this name, this website name, we're going to come to Vault Vision, and we're going to create our auth tenant using this no-code quick start. So all we need to do is put in the name of our website and create our tenant in this no-code quick start wizard. You can see we've got success. It's just that easy. And in order to tie the two together, we simply copy this script tag using this copy button, and that will put this script tag in our clipboard, where we can come back to Webflow, go to the site settings, find the custom code tab at the far right, and we can simply put in our script tag. Now, since this one's going to connect over to our auth connector that's going to be a bridge to Airtable, we're just going to change a few values here. But first, we're going to add in our dnone class, and I'll show you how we use that to change styles. So the values we're going to change are this data private light from false to true, and then we're going to put in for the base URL, the URL of our auth connector. I'll show another video on how you actually set that up, but it's basically a pass-through so that we can make those Airtable requests and those auth requests with just a simple script tag here in Webflow. So now that we've got that published, we have connected Vault Vision to our Webflow website. It was just that simple. So now the next task that we're going to undertake is to actually go back to Vault Vision and add a few design elements. So now that we've got them connected, we're going to go into our designer, and we're going to change out the login page and the sign up page images. So once we've selected the active tenant that we just created, we're going to drag and drop a new image for the login page into our Vault Vision designer. And this is a great feature that ties the two together, and it makes it very customizable for any brand. So not only can we change the image on the login page, but also on the sign up page. But we're not done yet. We've got a lot of customization we can do. Here you can see we can change the background color, the foreground color, the color of the body and text. And for this example, we're just going to update the background color, the foreground color, and because the logo we're using has a special transparency, we can even add a custom CSS. Because our logo is basically white on white, we're going to add a custom CSS that changes that logo and inverts it so that it can be dark on white. And it's just that easy. Not only that, but we can choose whether we want any images at all. We could have it centered if we wanted. The next step we do here is we're going to upload a new logo. So in this Webflow example, the new logo is the daily startup or the daily stand-up. Again, you can't see it on the left because it's white on white, but it is uploaded. And we're also going to allow TOTP codes via email as a secondary MFA option. And that's part of how we're super secure, where you have a variety of MFA options. The next piece is we're going to quickly create a new private application, and this application is for our auth bridge that I mentioned earlier. This auth bridge is something that runs very simply on a variety of platforms that allows you to encapsulate your connector to Airtable so that you can use an API key in this bridge without exposing it to users by putting it in JavaScript. And this is what makes it super secure, because it's also this auth connector that checks the login status of the user before allowing it to make Airtable requests. Okay, so first things first, let's change out the sign up and log out buttons or links to ones that are tied to the Vault Vision authentication system. Now it's just as easy as dragging a link onto the page. Now we're going to class it with the same class home nav link as the other existing links so that it looks the same. And then we're going to add our special Vault Vision classes. So the first one we're going to add is that we want to show this link when somebody is unauthenticated. So to do that, we add this class, this unauth class. And by adding this unauth class, it'll only show when someone is not logged in. And in order to make this link act like a login link, we add the auth button login class. And lastly, we add dnone so that it starts out not displayed. It starts out hidden and will only show if somebody's unauthenticated. All right, so now that we've got the login link, we're going to delete the sign out and the logout links, and we're going to duplicate the one that we just created 2 times to make a new sign up and a new logout link. So now that we've got 3 of them that are the same, we're going to make this one the logout by changing the text, and we're going to remove the classes that tie it to the Vault Vision platform and replace them with the ones that are appropriate for the logout link. So specifically auth button logout, and again dnone. You're going to see we're going to use dnone quite a bit, and this hides the actual element until the page has a chance to determine whether somebody's logged in or logged out. Now you'll notice we've got the unauth class still there, and when you're authenticated, that's when you want to see a logout link. So we want to change this to be the auth class, as you see. Again, we re-add auth button logout and dnone. And now we'll move over to the sign up link. So we're going to choose this middle one to be the sign up. That's pretty standard. After we change the text here, we're going to go and update the classes. So instead of being auth button logout, it's going to be auth button sign up. And again, we're going to add the dnone class so that the unauth class is really what controls whether this shows or doesn't show when you've logged in or not. So here we've got login, logout, and sign up. So let's publish. It's very exciting. So where are we at? I think we're about 9 minutes in, and we've already successfully added full authentication. So here we are, we're looking at our website. We've got a login link, we've got a sign up link. Let's click sign up. And again, you see, we've got the customized sign up page with our image on the left. The color scheme we chose is great. The logo is consistent with what's on the page. And here we're going to do a passkey login, but of course we don't have the full email address. Silly me. So once we get the right email address, we're going to do a passkey login. Now, what's happening on the screen is passkey is a new technology that does a passwordless login. And what's happening is my device was actually prompting me to log in with either my PIN, my Face ID, or a Touch ID. And so that's how passwordless logins work. And as you can see here, we logged out. It changed the menu items. And now we're going to log back in with this same account. Now you'll notice we'll use the passkey login again. And now on my screen, a system level prompt is asking me to validate with either PIN, Touch ID, or Face ID. And now that I'm logged in, you can see we no longer have the option to sign out or to sign up or log in. We only have the option to log out. So if we go back to the designer, the next step that we want to do is to create a new page where we can show a little bit of gated content. So it's great that we have the ability to sign up and log in, but really to make this, of function to a user, we want to make it so that we can hide some content. So we're going to create a new page called gated, and we're going to show you exactly how you can modify a simple div to only show when somebody's logged in. You just simply add the auth class, and you'll also want to add the dnone class. So by adding those two classes, you can control whether this shows or hides. Now, these are really just hidden. So the content is still there on the page. It just isn't shown to the user unless the user's logged in. You only get to see this content when you're logged in. Now, it is still on the page, so if somebody was very technical, they could still see it. But again, we add the dnone class. And now that whole right sidebar will only show when users are logged in. So if we come and we publish, relaunch the page, you can see we are not logged in, so we do not see that right sidebar. It does not show up. It is hidden. But once we log in, and again, we'll use the account we just created, and it will use this new passkey technology. You'll notice there's no password being entered. It's simply prompting me on the device, which you can't see, to authenticate with my PIN, a Face ID, or Touch ID. Okay, and then let's go to that same gated page, and bam, there's the right sidebar. This is that really great content you see when you're only logged in. And it'll go away if we log out. And you can see we go back to the gated content goes away. And we're prompted where we can log in or sign up because we're logged out. So that's as easy as it is to make some gated content. Simply add a class of auth and dnone, and all of that content will now hide or show based on whether you're logged in or not. So let's log back in again with our new fancy passkey technology. And we'll check that gated. Boom. You'll see that sidebar only shows up when you're logged in. So the next part in our agenda is we want to now create a form that integrates with Airtable. So here's an Airtable table. We're going to do a simple form that does a book review. And in order to tie this into the whole Vault Vision system, all we need to do is add a column called vvid. So by adding that column vvid to the Airtable table, we can now sync this up with a form that'll show up on our gated page where we can simply add a book review on this page, and this form will then populate this Airtable data field. So first we'll add a subtitle, and again we'll use the same pattern where it only shows up when it's authenticated. I'm just working on getting the positioning just right. So nothing too fancy here, but again, we're going to put the classes of auth and dnone so that this this div or this element, this subtitle element, only shows when somebody's logged in. And now we're going to simply get a form element from the components here. We're going to drop it in right underneath our subheader. Now there's a little bit of a gap there. We'll fix that in a second. But here we're going to simply tie this to the Vault Vision platform by giving it the class authForm. So it's that easy to tie a form to the auth platform. We're going to use that same pattern. We only want it to show when a user's logged in. So we give it the auth and the dnone classes. And now we're going to try to move this subtitle to be a little closer to the form. I'm going to go into the navigator and find this subtitle element and try to drag it closer to the top of the form. Just by putting it a little bit outside the container there. Whoops, too high. Too high. All right. There we go. Perfect. All right. So, as you saw in the earlier Airtable table, we've got two fields. One's called title and review. So here we're just going to change the label to title. And on the text box, we have to tie that to the column name of our Airtable table. So to do that, we just simply, we're going to give the name of the form, auth form, but for the text field, we're simply going to change its name from name to title. And that's all it takes to tie a text field element on a form back to an Airtable table. You just match the names up. And this is the review field. So we're simply going to change the label to review. And then go back to the actual field itself and change its name to review. And that's so that it matches the Airtable column name. So we've got a title field and a review field. It's on a form where we've set the class to be authForm. We've set it to show up when it's authed, and we've set our dnone. Now, you can do different things to control the visibility, but in order to make this form, so you might be asking, well, how does this form know about my Airtable base and my Airtable table? How do I set exactly where it goes? So we do that with what's called a custom attribute. The first custom attribute we have to add is something called data-auth-table, where we just make it equal to books. Books is the name of our Airtable table that we just pointed out. And now we want to select the base ID, and this comes from the URL of our Airtable database, and we're just going to paste in this base ID into another custom attribute called data-auth-base-ID. So what this is doing is this is telling our form exactly where to put this data in Airtable. It's going to put it in the books table with the base ID that we copied out from the Airtable URL. All right, so let's give it a shot. Let's try it out. Let's refresh. Let's go to our gated page. And voila, here we're logged in. We never logged out from the last time, so we're still logged in. And now we are going to add a book review. The Great Gatsby, how about? Does that one seem good for everybody? A little 20s action. And I've never read The Great Gatsby, but I'm going to lie on my review here, and I'm going to say that it was great fun to read. All right, now that submission went through our auth platform. We validated that the user was logged in. That was part of what our auth connector was, and you can see the record. We see a couple of blank records here that we're just going to clean up, but boom. That's how easy it was to get functionality, user-specific functionality from your Webflow website into this Airtable table. and we're at 20 minutes. So in 20 minutes, we've added auth, we've added a authenticated submission form that has been automatically linked to an Airtable. I guess not automatically, but it's been linked to an Airtable instance. And now that's great and all, but how do we get that data back out? So let's go back to our home page. Let's use our home page, and let's create a new element that will list out those books that we've reviewed. And we've got the subtitle. We're going to use the same thing where we set the class to auth and d-none so that it only shows when somebody's authenticated. And then we're simply going to just grab a div. Any old div block will do. And that div block, we're going to set some classes on it so that we can dynamically make it attached to our Airtable table. So we've got it positioned where we want it. And it's a little trick is this div is dynamic, so we're going to make the text say loading so that as the dynamic read happens out of the Airtable database, it will then replace the loading with the actual data. But this is great so that it doesn't just show a blank field. All right, we're going to add our standard classes of auth and d-none, but you'll notice we added auth list table first. And so that auth list table class is really what tells our VisionAuth platform that this is a list that we want to grab data from this table for. And we're going to connect it by using these same custom attributes. So the first one is the data-auth base ID that we used on the form, and then the second one is the data-auth table, just like we did on the form. This is going to be books. Now there's a couple of other fields that we need here because we need to give it a little bit more information on how we actually display this list. So what those fields are going to be is we've got to tell it which field we want it to pull, which column. And we're going to just do something easy. We're going to say just pull the title column by adding a data-auth table field custom attribute that's with the value of title. So that's how we're telling it which column to pull. And then for in order for this to display, we can actually do a JavaScript template string. So I could even have text here and then add in the actual JavaScript template. But for this, it's just going to be a JavaScript expression of $ curly brace field. So this is how we're telling the template string to be formatted. We just want the raw value of the field that we specified in our data-auth table field custom attribute. And just by setting up those parameters, going to our site and rerunning it, we can see that we've got a small issue. So we forgot a parameter. So the parameter we forgot is to tell this to cache this data on the page. So we add data-auth table cache equal page, and we'll try again. So not every demo is without a small little hiccup. So now that we've told it where to cache the data, we'll refresh, and voila, we've got the Great Gatsby. And so the great part about this is it only returns the data that's appropriate for the user that's logged in. So let's add another book. We'll do The Shining, something that's super scary. And now we expect to see that in our Airtable table. And we expect to see it on our homepage. So there we are. We go back to the home page, and voila, that is read out of our Airtable table, and that's based on the fact that we've logged in. So that's super great, but what happens if we were an additional user? So let's create a second user and see how this is going to work. Now for this one, we're just going to use a normal password. We're not going to do the passkey login because with our platform, you can do passwordless passkey, you can do password, or you can log in with Google, Apple, or Microsoft accounts. It's very, very flexible, and we found that this is really helpful for signing up users by giving more options we've seen up to a 40% increase in user signups. Of course, we got to get the email address right. And now we will register a new user. Again, whoops, look at that. Nothing in the books I reviewed. Luckily, there is a option where we can make that have a default value. So again, it loaded up pretty quick, but it found we didn't have any books. So we can add another custom attribute, a data-auth-default, that will show when there isn't any records returned. And that way we won't have that empty bullet. We'll have some value that gets shown instead. So for this, we'll just say no books reviewed. And thus that will show up as the default when somebody has not reviewed any books or when there's no data. We republish and let's give it another look-see. We refresh the page and voila, no books reviewed. And that's because we don't have any data yet. But let's fix that. Let's add some data. So let's go back to our gated page and let's add some data under this specific user. Again, we logged in earlier, so we already know what user we are. We're going to add Jane Eyre as a book to review. We're going to stick to the classics and we're going to add this to the second user. And we're going to add a couple more just so that we can see some diversity of data when we look at this in the Airtable. So let's do Of Mice and Men. It's another classic for this same second user. And let's do 3. So for the third, we will do Lord of the Flies. I had to read that in elementary school. It's pretty appropriate. So this will be our final classic that we review for this second user. So now when we go back to Airtable, you'll see we have the first 2 books for the first user, and then the next 3 were tied to that very specific user we just created. And we went past it pretty fast, but when we go back to the home page, we see just those 3 books for that user. And if we log in as the original first user, we're going to see just the 2 books for that first user. Now this is the magic of the system. Is that again, we've got this really great passwordless login. I'm just unlocking my device on a screen you can't see because it's at a secure system level screen. And we load up the 2 books for user 1. Now let's go back. Let's log out that we saw those 2 books. Let's use our we want to see, let's see what happens when we change this data inside of Airtable. So we're going to log in, we're going to change the data, we're going to log in as the second user, and we will expect to see that change that we just made in Airtable, that volume 2, to now show up. And this is nice if you have some sort of maybe a back office admin process where maybe you need to change data, but boom, we have Of Mice and Men volume 2 that got read strictly out of here. Again, we can very quickly change this to a volume 3 and then go back, refresh the page, and it should pick it up. And with a simple refresh, it pulled that freshest data from Airtable. And that's it. That's how you can do fantastic user authentication with dynamic features of authenticated form submissions and gated content. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much.